DND number 9, Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Chapter 11. It's April 9th, Tuesday morning, Keno Estate, Crystal Cove, California. Shelley searched for and found her husband walking on the beach. He seemed deep in thought. He'd been like that a lot lately. He looked up as she approached and smiled at her. That smile had always got to her. The day they'd met, he'd smiled at her with such kindness. She'd run into him, literally, and he was helping her up, picking up her things, and he smiled at her, and that was it. Boom. Love at first sight. They knew now that was because they were supposed to be together. He reached his hand out to her and pulled her close and kissed her softly. "Hello, Shelley girl," he said. "Hi, Eric. What are you doing?" He chuckled. "What does it look like I'm doing?" "Well, at first glance, it looks like you are merely walking on the beach, but I know there's more to it than that." "And what makes you think that?" "Because with you, there's always more to it." And so there is. They stood together silently for a minute or two. "So, Eric, are you going to share your thoughts?" "Yes. I suppose I was just contemplating life. How strange it is, the circle of life and death and life again." "What do you mean exactly?" He shrugged. "I don't know yet exactly what I mean. I haven't come to any conclusions yet. I was thinking about my father. He just turned 80 when he passed. Just 11 years older than me. Our time together was very short, though, because he sent me off on my own when I was just 18, and it was difficult to get back to Kauai to see my parents on a regular basis. But our time together as a family, before we left the island, with all my aunts and uncles and cousins who were like brothers and sisters to me, it was a wonderful time. It seems... Gotta fix something real quick. Oh, goodness. Sorry. Okay. It was a wonderful time. It seems the time early in a marriage, when the kids are young and full of life and mischief, those are such happy times. So, you're saying the times when Ricky was young, when Anne was still alive, were those your happiest times? He pulled her close. "Oh, my sweet Shelley, are you doubting yourself again? What am I going to do with you, huh? Those were happy times, yes. And then Anne died, and I tried hard to understand and move forward. And then along came the most wonderful and beautiful girl in the world, and the time spent with you and little Mark and Joey and Ricky and Bree and our own little June flower. They were such happy times, just the best. But the kids grew up and moved away. That's kind of sad," Shelley added. "Well, it seems sad at first, but then I remember when I grew up and moved away from my parents, and I was excited about life, and I wouldn't have wanted them to be sad. I imagine our kids don't want us to be sad either." "Are you sad, Eric?" "No, not at all. First, I have you, and I love you, Shelley girl, with a love so powerful sometimes I think I will simply spontaneously combust." He brushed some hair out of her face, which was a particular habit of his. "You are so amazing, so beautiful, so kind, so strong. I'm so proud of you. And now we have the grandchildren, who are also growing up. It happens so fast, doesn't it? In the blink of an eye. If only we could live more in the moment, appreciating every smile, every walk on the beach, every adventure, both good and bad. I thought we do. You've taught me to do exactly that. I want to do it even more than we do already. Like right now, looking at you, the sun shining on your hair, your sweet smile, your strong body. No one would think you were in your 50s, much less in your 60s. The fact that you searched me out and came down here to join me on the beach, you took the time to do that, and here we are, having a beautiful conversation. Isn't that what life is? Having conversations. Some verbal, some just a look or a smile at a stranger. She nodded thoughtfully. It feels like your mind is all over the place. He chuckled. It is. Like I said, I haven't come to any conclusions. I was just sharing my thoughts with you. He tilted her face up and kissed her. Tell me, my love, is there a reason you came down to find me? Is there something you need from me? Oh, oh, yes, I completely forgot what I came down here to ask you. He smiled. Okay, what is it? Well, Lisa Stewart called me. Of course, she knows my story and knows that I've done some speaking on recovering from the trauma of rape. And she wanted to know if I could speak to Lena. I want to help her the best I can, and so I told her it would be best if I speak to her in person. Eric nodded. I agree. And then I thought Jeffy could certainly do her thing, and help her find some healing. Absolutely. So I spoke with Jeffy, and she suggested that if she and I were flying to Georgia for the weekend, you might as well bring Taylor because apparently she's really struggling. Over Gabe? Yes, bless her heart. And then Bree said if Taylor was going, she might as well come too. And then I heard from Lisa that Gabe has a baseball game on Friday evening, and maybe you and Ricky would like to tag along with us girls and see Gabe play. I know it's a long way to go to see a little high school baseball game, but I thought I'd throw it out there anyway. Well, do you already have plane reservations? No, not yet. I wanted to see first if you and Ricky wanted to come. I would love to accompany my girls to Georgia. Let me take over the transportation plans. I'll talk to Ricky and Jason. If Jason has a jet already headed to the East Coast, we might be able to hitch a ride. If not, I'll make the reservations. And just like that, you make things so much easier. Well, my life in serving God means I need to be in service to others. And helping you plan a little trip is no big deal. I'm happy to serve you in any way you need. She smiled. I'll keep that in mind. He laughed. Oh, I know you will. New scene. April 10th. It's Wednesday morning, the Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Gabe made his bed, grabbed up the small gift bag, and headed down the stairs at a gallop. At the last minute, he saw the small plastic pink pony with long purple mane and tail. He tried to avoid stepping on it and ended up tumbling down the remainder of the steps, making several loud thumping sounds and ending with a soft groan. Keegan and the twins came running from the kitchen, and Lizzie came running from her bedroom upstairs. What in the world? Lizzie exclaimed. Gabe sat up. I'm okay. I just tripped. Go back to bed, Mom. But please, Gabe said, I'm okay. Lizzie turned around and went back to her room. It was her birthday, and she knew they were trying to get together a birthday breakfast for her before they had to leave for their day. And Keegan looked at his son with a smile. You sure you're okay? Gabe grinned as little Iris came to him and put her arms around his neck. Yeah, I'm good, but I tripped over your little pony, Gabe complained at Iris. My pony! Where's my pony? He stood and reached up onto the steps and grabbed it. Here you go, you little flower. But you shouldn't leave it on the steps. Someone could get hurt. She smiled and took the pony from him and headed back into the kitchen. Come on, Gabe. We're making Mommy a birthday breakfast. Yes, I know, he said as he picked up the gift bag that went flying. I hope that wasn't breakable, Keegan said. Well, thank goodness it's not. He walked into the kitchen. Good morning, everyone, he said to his sisters. My Gabriel always knows how to make an entrance, Rose said as she mussed his hair. He frowned and ran his hand through his hair to fix it. What can I do to help? He asked. Nothing. We're about ready, Keegan said as he lifted the tray holding eggs and hash browns with toast and jelly and a glass of orange juice, plus one of Maddie's giant blueberry muffins with a candle in it. Gabe picked up Iris. Come on, Squirt. Let's go see Mommy. They gathered outside the bedroom door, and Violet got Heather on FaceTime, and Keegan held the tray down so Daisy could light the candle. Everybody ready? Rose asked. They all nodded. She opened the door, and the family started singing Happy Birthday as they walked into the room and placed the tray on Lizzie's lap. She smiled up at her husband, her eyes shining, and he placed his hand lovingly on the side of her face and bent down and kissed her softly. Happy birthday, my sweet Elizabeth, he said softly. Gabe loved how much his father took care of his mother. The girls all sighed because they too loved how good their father was to their mother. Happy birthday, Mom, all 7 children called out. Oh, thank you, everyone, Lizzie said sweetly. This is such a surprise. Gabe just rolled his eyes. They all knew that she knew, and she knew that they all knew that she knew. Blow out the candle, Mommy, Iris insisted. Okay, let me make a wish. I wish that, well, I really wish that I could freeze this moment in time. You're all growing up so fast. Her eyes filled with tears. Everyone laughed at their mother getting emotional because it was something she did often. Lizzie giggled when they laughed, and she took a bite of her eggs. This is so good. I bet Dad made this breakfast. Keegan smiled. Well, I admit I allowed Vi to put the bread in the toaster, but I had to have Rose keep an eye on her. Ha ha, very funny, Daddy. I'm not that bad, Violet said. When the whole room went silent for a few seconds, everyone burst out laughing. Anyway, Violet said, Here, Mom, Rose and I got this for you. Lizzie took the offered bag and pulled out a wooden wall hanging that formed the word family, and along the bottom dangled little silver medallions with each person's name and birth date on it. Oh, now, isn't that just beautiful, Lizzie said. And I think I know just where I'm going to put it, in that place right as you come downstairs on that wall to the right. That would be perfect, Mom, Rose said. Both she and Violet kissed their mother. Rose held up her phone for Lizzie to take. Hey, Mom, Heather said from her place in Tennessee. Sorry I couldn't be there, but I want you to know I love you, and I saw this in a store up here, and I had to have one special made just for you. Rose handed it to her. Rose handed a small but heavy box wrapped in blue paper with a white satin ribbon. Lizzie opened it and found a large, clear paperweight, and inside the weight were tiny replicas of a rose, a violet, a daisy, a lily, an iris, and a spray of heather, representing each of the daughters' names. And if you look very closely, Mom, in the very center is an angel. And I know it looks kind of girly, but that represents Gabriel. Everyone laughed, and Gabe shrugged. I can handle it, because I know I am Mom's angel. There was more laughter and a few snorts. Thank you, Heather. I absolutely love it. This is so sweet. This is from Daisy and I, Lily said as she handed her a small gift bag. Lizzie pulled out her favorite, very expensive brand of perfume. The family usually took turns giving her a bottle of it every year. Aw, thank you, girls. You know I love this. I do too, Keegan said, and the girls all giggled. We actually love it too, Rose said. It reminds me of you and makes me think of times you've been close to me, like when I got the flu or when you fixed my scraped knee when I was little. Oh, you guys, Lizzie said as she teared up again. Keegan handed Iris her gift. I made this for you, Mommy, Iris said happily. She held a paper plate out to her mother. Lizzie turned it over and made a huge gasp. She was looking at a blue paper plate with dried lima beans glued onto it in the shape of a heart. Oh, my goodness, Iris. This is beautiful. I love it so much. Iris beamed. Daddy helped me, and Gabe too, and Daisy too. Who helped you write your name? Daddy. Well, you all did a wonderful job. Give me a hug, Iris. I love it so much. Keegan lifted her onto the bed to hug her mother. Gabe stepped forward and kissed his mother on the cheek. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. He handed her the gift bag. She pulled out a velvet box and opened it. Her eyes teared up again. Oh, Gabe, I love it. Well, let us see, Rose said. It was a necklace with 2 gold hearts interlinked. On one heart was engraved the word mother, and on the other heart was the word son. It's like forever linked, Gabe explained. Lizzie laughed through her tears. Oh, I get it, sweetie. They all laughed, and Gabe blushed. He glanced at his father, who nodded at him. My turn, Keegan said. He handed Lizzie a small rectangular package. She smiled at him and opened it carefully. It was a hardcover book. The front jacket had baby pics of all 7 children, all made to look like angels. Lizzie opened the book and began to read, and once again her eyes filled with tears. She sniffed and read aloud. Once upon a time, there were 5 little angels. Now, these angels all had big blue eyes and beautiful blonde hair. Heather on the phone was the first to recognize the story. Daddy, that's the first story you ever told us. Keegan smiled and nodded. All of them are in the book, Lizzie, all that I could remember, all that I ever told, and I got an artist to illustrate the book. She closed the book and hugged it to her chest. I love this, Keegan. Oh, my goodness, I love this so much. He smiled. Is my story in there about the bad angel who loved to wreck his fire truck? Gabe asked. The girls laughed as they remembered it. Yes, yours is in there. I think there's about 12 stories in the book. Wow, Dad, you're a published author, Violet said. He laughed. Right? Who knew I could tell children's stories? Lizzie smiled. I did. She clapped her hands together. Oh, everyone, thank you so much for the best birthday ever. I feel so blessed. Keegan nodded. Indeed, we are. Let's have a family prayer, and then this guy's got to get to school. New scene. It's April 12th, Friday afternoon, Pine Forest High School, Pine Forest, Georgia. Gabe's spirit had lifted since Monday. It seemed the novelty of him being something special was finally winding down. Oh, there were still hundreds of videos out, the ones showing actual interesting parts of the tournament, like the winning sequence. Those were pretty cool. Gabe himself had watched them several times, mostly trying to figure out where he could improve. The other ones were also still out. Balls of Steel had over 13 million views. Other stupid ones that zeroed in on his eyes and then moved down to his abs had well over 1 million views. Thankfully, though, the kids at school seemed to have calmed down and moved on. What had really lifted his spirit was finding out that Taylor was coming to visit and she and her family were coming to his game. Their flight would be arriving in the next hour, and because of Friday afternoon Atlanta traffic, by the time they got here, he would already be on the field warming up. Still, as soon as the game was over, he intended to make her feel very welcome. He headed for the locker room where some food was waiting, usually chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans and a biscuit. The beans went mostly uneaten. Gabe ate and chatted with his teammates, mostly about their opponent, Upton County. It made him think about that girl at church whose name he still didn't know. She'd posted her unauthorized church pic on Instagram, which had like 20,000 likes with comments about him being a Christian. He was not ashamed of that, just not happy about how even that very special part of his life was now public domain. Still, if it brought people to God, that's totally cool. Who knows? Maybe that's why all this had happened anyway. After dinner, they suited up. Gabe found his heart beating pretty fast, knowing that soon he could look through the fence and see Taylor. She would be easy to spot. Her father and mother and grandparents would also be here. There may even be a crowd around them asking for autographs. The coach was speaking, and Gabe made himself pay attention. Coach was talking about focusing on the game. Well, what else would they be doing? What did he miss? So, thanks to our shortstop, the stands are completely full on both sides. The soccer field on the other side of center field is filled with people who had to go home and bring back their lawn chairs. People are sitting in the parking lot on their tailgates. The parking lots are full, and people are having to walk 3 blocks to park along the street. My wife has gone crazy at the concession and had to send people to get more food and drinks. Gabe's mouth opened in surprise. Coach? What is it, Tanner? I don't understand. Why is it my fault there's no parking? Because apparently, with all the social media attention you've been getting, people have come from all over to get a look at you up close and personal. The guys laughed, and Gabe didn't think it was funny. How do you know they're all here for me? I mean, couldn't it be just be it's because our first game after spring break and everyone wants to come? Oh, it's you they've come for, Tanner. When we get out there, you'll see. He shook his head. People are crazy. Hey, don't worry about it. If a huge crowd wants to come to our game and cheer for the home team, I got no problems with that. The only thing I'm trying to say is you guys need to forget the crowd and all the girls out there and focus on the game. If you do that, then you won't embarrass yourselves in front of the world, 'cause I'm telling you, you guys are good. I'm not just saying that. I mean, this year, we have a real chance to go to state and take it all away. So focus, please. He turned to Gabe. Any other surprises you want to tell us before we get out there? Gabe grimaced. Well, I hope it doesn't cause too much of a commotion, but the Kenos are in town and they're going to be here at the game. Probably already are out there somewhere. The Kenos as in Ricky Keno? Yes, sir, and his wife Brianna Adams and his daughter and... Oh, yeah, Gabe, you know you got to introduce me, Peyton said. Gabe blew out a breath. Coach jumped in. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Forget about who's here. Focus on the game. If I have to call you out, there's going to be hell to pay. You got it? Yes, sir, they all answered. Okay. Anyone who wants to pray can pray. Anyone who doesn't want to pray, don't. No judgment, no division, all good, all team, the coach said as he did at the end of every practice and before every game. All good, all team, the boys repeated. You causing all the commotion, Tanner. You do the praying, pitcher Carlos said. I got no problem with that, Gabe said. They huddled together and bowed their heads as Gabe prayed, asking for a spirit of camaraderie and good sportsmanship, asking that they will be able to play to the best of their abilities, asking that there would be no injuries on either team, and thanking God for their coach and for the opportunity to play, and he did it in Jesus' name. Go Rebels, they said together. Revved up, the team headed out, and they headed to the first base dugout, and Gabe turned to look at the crowd sitting in the bleachers behind the dugout. He looked for his father, always on the top bleacher. Always on the top bleacher, always standing so Gabe could find him. Gabe tipped his hat at his dad. His father pointed at him and nodded. Gabe's mom was helping baby Iris to wave at him. Gabe's heart slammed into his ribs as the Kenos came into focus, sitting right in front of his parents. Taylor was smiling at him. He tipped his hat at her, too, which made her smile bigger. Her mother patted her on the back and leaned close to whisper to her daughter. What part of focus did you not get, Tanner? Sorry, Coach, just trying to see what you were talking about. You said I would be able to see that everyone was here for me. Yeah, and don't you see it? He looked around, really looking at the crowd, and then he realized most of the people in the stands, on both sides, were wearing Team Gabe shirts. Oh, yes, sir, he said with a sigh. I see it. Now focus, Coach said again. Gabe nodded. He did some stretching. He pulled his glove from the bag and waited for the other team to vacate the field. And once he took the field for warm-ups, he fell into his rhythm and was able to do just what the coach was asking. As he warmed up, every time the ball came to him and he scooped it up and fired it to first, you'd think he just made the play of the century. But after the first few times of that happening, he was able to block them out. They came in from warming up. The announcer started welcoming everyone and introducing the Upton Cavaliers, who lined up along the third base line as their names were called. They did the same for the Pine Forest Rebels, who lined up along the first base line. They introduced the umps and then asked everyone to stand for the national anthem. And as always, they invited any active duty military and veterans to come to the middle of the field. Keegan Tanner, John Apple, Jake Apple, and several other men and women from both sides came to the center of the field. They faced the flag flying over the rear of the center field fence, stood at attention, and saluted as the anthem played. Gabe always loved this part. He felt such pride and patriotism, but there was more. The other team right now was the enemy, but in this, together, they were all Americans, and Gabe always felt it deep in his soul. Anthem over, the military on the field took a moment to shake hands with each other. Everyone returned to their places. Carlos, warming up, fired his final pitch. Liam caught it, stood, fired the ball to second. They whipped it around the horn and threw the ball in. Play ball. Carlos fired in a strike on the first pitch. Second pitch, the batter hit a shot. Gabe dove, grabbed it, reversed direction, fired it to first, batter out. The crowd was on their feet for Gabe, going crazy. But this time he wasn't hearing it. He was in the zone and stayed in the zone, and there was no score as they went into the bottom of the first. Gabe was the first batter, not because he was a big power hitter, but because he was fast and usually found a way to get on base, walk, single, beating out a throw somehow. Today he did better than that. It went to full count. He swung and hit a line drive double. He slid into second, came up quickly, dusted off his shirt, tucked it back in, and waited. When the pitcher was ready to throw to the next batter, Gabe walked several feet toward third and on the first pitch took off. It was close, but he made it. He held his hand up to call time. Again, dusted himself off, clapped his hands hard, motivating his teammate who was at bat to bring him in. Lena was standing, clapping her hands. She raised her finger to her lips and let out a sharp, very loud whistle. "You go, boy," she screamed at the top of her lungs. "That's my guy. Yes!" Jake watched her, not able to keep the grin from his face. Coming to this game was indeed good for her. She was focusing on something other than the violation of her body. He joined her, whistling and yelling encouragement to Gabe. The crowd, too, was eating it up. The guy they'd come to see was amazing in their eyes. He wasn't just a superb martial artist, as they'd seen on the videos. He wasn't just some great-looking hunky kid. This guy was an all-around athlete, and he was growing in popularity as each minute ticked on. Whether it was him clapping his hands at his teammates, jumping up and down like some little kid when something good happened, placing his hands on his hips and kicking dirt in front of him, taking off his hat and wiping the sweat from his brow, it didn't matter. He could do no wrong. 2 pitches later, the ball hit the dirt, got past the catcher, and Gabe took off. The umpire called him safe, and the place erupted like they'd just won the World Series. It looked like Gabe was going to have a good game. Taylor was leaned over, talking to Jake and Lena, getting them to explain to her what exactly was taking place. She was discovering a whole new world, thanks to Gabe. Guns, baseball. Who knew? After Gabe scored, the batter, Elias, got on. The next batter, Lucas, struck out. The next batter, Peyton, hit a home run. Score, 3-0 Rebels. There was a pitching change. And the next batter, Liam, ground out, and the next one popped out. Second inning, 3 up, 3 down for both teams. Third inning, Gabe was up first again. The crowd went wild. Apparently, this was not sitting well with the other team, and definitely not with their pitcher. He wound up, threw hard, and right at Gabe. Gabe tried to get out of the way, but the ball hit him solidly on the upper arm, and Gabe went down for a minute. The crowd was roaring, booing. Gabe sat up, rubbing his arm. Coach came out to check on him, and Gabe nodded that he was okay. The ump pointed at first, awarding him first base, and then the ump turned and warned the pitcher. "What the hell?" Lena screamed. "Come on, Blue," Keegan and John were yelling. "Are you crazy, Blue?" Lena screamed. "That was intentional." Gabe walked slowly down to first, his eyes on the pitcher. He pointed at the guy and nodded his head. Jake was busy calling out his own sentiment and also explaining to Taylor that the pitcher intentionally hit Gabe, probably because Gabe was having a good game and he was obviously popular. He was explaining that an HBP, hit by pitch, whether intentional or unintentional, gave Gabe first base, and that the pitcher was playing a mind game to try to turn the momentum of the game. He explained to her that everyone was mad because they felt like the pitcher should be ejected from the game rather than receive a warning. And he explained to her that in his opinion, the pitcher messed up because Gabe was going to make him wish he'd never let him on base. Jake turned out to be right. Gabe kept taking big leads off first. The pitcher kept throwing to first, trying to pick him off. The crowd booed every time. And finally, he threw an actual pitch to the next batter, and Gabe immediately stole second. That was great payback for hitting him with the pitch, but not enough for Gabe. He also stole third. He really wanted to steal home, but his teammate got a hit and Gabe scored. Good enough. Gabe clapped his hands hard for Elias, who got the hit. "You the man," he yelled at Elias, jumping up and down before he went to the dugout. Taylor watched closely as all his teammates stood in line to high-five him. Gabe tossed his helmet to the equipment manager, grabbed his water, squirted it over his face, and then some into his mouth, and sat down on the bench to cheer on Lucas. "You got this, Luke," Gabe yelled. Rebels ended up scoring twice more after Gabe, making the score at the end of 3, 6-0. In the field, the Rebels were executing flawlessly. Gabe made several more scoops, turning one into a double play, ending the other team's hope of finally scoring that inning. Gabe didn't get up to bat again until the 5th inning. His showing was highly anticipated, and when he came to the plate, the crowd was already on their feet. They were yelling so loud that even the ones far away, sitting out in the soccer field, could be heard. First pitch was a little inside, so Gabe laid off. Second pitch brushed him back, but he was able to get out of the way. The crowd booed. The third pitch did exactly what the pitcher meant to do. Gabe tried to duck, but it still drilled him in the side of his helmet. He went down and the dugouts emptied. Gabe rolled to his back and started to get up and then laid back down. The assistant coach was by his side along with one teammate, Peyton. Up in the stands, Lizzie placed her hands on her husband's arm and Keegan covered it. "He's okay," he said. The crowd was going crazy. Keegan, John, Jake, Ricky, and Eric were on their feet but very quiet. Lena would have climbed out of the stands and into the brawl taking place on the field if Jake hadn't grabbed her. Taylor had her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide. Gabe sat up and realized the place had gone crazy. The head coaches were nose to nose yelling at each other. Some members of each team were shoving each other while other members of the teams were trying to prevent a free-for-all. The umpires were trying to restore order. The head umpire had already thrown the pitcher from the game. The ejected pitcher's team was trying to push him back so that they could protect him from the Rebels. Gabe finally stood and brushed himself off and found his helmet and placed it back on his head. The coach was talking to him, looking into his eyes. Gabe was nodding, obviously telling him that he was okay. Grandmaster Keno looked over at his daughter. "Jeffy?" She drew a deep breath and nodded. "He's okay, a little dizzy." That news made Taylor feel a lot better. The teams were ushered back into their respective dugouts, and Gabe was sent to first. He leaned over, hands on knees, talked to the first base coach while they waited for the new pitcher to take his warm-up throws. And when the game started again, Gabe did not take a big lead off first. He played it safe. After all, they were ahead 6-0, and he was feeling a little sluggish. With the new fresh pitcher, no one else got a hit, and Gabe was stranded. The last 2 innings of the game were non-eventful. It was a lackluster finish, but still, the Pine Forest Rebels won the game. People slowly started to file out, but many stayed, trying to get a word with or pick of Gabe. There was also a huge line waiting for Ricky Keno and Brianna Adams' autographs, which they were generously signing. The boys retrieved their bags from the locker room and headed out. Peyton stood next to Gabe, somewhat as a protector, but also to meet any girls that Gabe turned down, which were quite a few. Within only a few minutes, Peyton had given his number to 6 girls. Gabe was tired and dizzy and trying to be kind to all these people who'd come out to see him play. Girls were all over him, kissing him on the cheek, actually putting their hands on him. He thought it was about done when who should appear in front of him but Isla August, the star of teenspotter.com. "Gabe Tanner, hello," she said, looking brightly at the guy with the camera trained on her. He sighed. "Hey." "There's that southern thing again. So sweet." He rolled his eyes. "Well, I said we would make it happen, and we did. Here I am. Our audience at teenspotter.com wanted to see you again, and they contributed to get me here. They've been so excited to see if you play baseball as well as you fight. And I tell you what, Gabe, you did not disappoint at all. You are a tremendous athlete. What do you think, people? Put it in the comments." "Thank you," Gabe muttered. "Can you believe that pitcher throwing at you like that? You got anything to say about it?" Gabe shrugged. "It happens. It's part of baseball. No big deal." "Doesn't that sound just like the words of our ultimate male?" she asked her unseen audience. She lifted her phone and read some comments. "Yum indeed," she agreed with one commenter. Gabe could feel his face turn red. All he wanted to do was go find Taylor and find somewhere private. "So what other tricks do you have up your sleeves, Gabe?" Tricks? "Martial arts, baseball, football, which I'm so sad that we missed. Anything else?" Nope, I'm just a simple guy. Aw, come on. I happen to know better. Don't be humble. Gabe had no idea what she was talking about. She turned brightly toward the camera. I have it on good authority that our own ultimate male is an expert sharpshooter. Gabe's mouth fell open. Is that true, Gabe? She said. I do some shooting sometimes, and I really need to be going. It was nice to see you again. You take care. You heard it straight from his mouth. What a guy. He's so humble. I did some research, and he's won several shooting competitions. Tell us, please, Gabe, that you'll see us again sometime. He smiled stiffly. Sure. She finished her spiel and turned back to Gabe to speak off camera. Hey, you've been a great sport, Gabe, really. I know you're not used to a bunch of publicity, but you really are a delightful young man. Is there anything I can do for you that would pay you back for how kind you've been to me and our audience? You can stop calling me that ridiculous name. What? The ultimate male? Yes. Funny how that happened. It was actually just a mistake. I was referring to the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Yeah, I know what the UFC is. So I messed up and said the ultimate male instead of ultimate fighter, but it stuck because, Gabe, whether you understand it or not, you are an ultimate male. You are gorgeous, hunky, and hot. Good grief. Well, you'd better accept it. You are all those things, and on top of that, you are really good at what you do. Plus, you're not cocky, and you're kind of innocent, and every teenage girl in this country would like to, at the very least, have a conversation with you, and most would like to do a whole lot more than that. I really gotta go. She put her hand on his arm. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. Look, I'm a lot older than you, but I'm good at what I do, and I know my audience, and what I'm telling you, it's all true. You are now a celebrity. From here on out, people will recognize you wherever you go. She pointed around. All this, it isn't going away. The moment I saw you at the mini mart, I knew you were money. And the few interviews you've granted me, sweetheart, you've boosted me into the top rankings. So thanks for that. Thanks for being real and honest and good old American boy from rural USA. So really, if I can do anything to help you adjust to this, let me know. Anything within reason. Hopefully, we'll see you again and have another chat soon. She held out her hand, a kind of peace offering. He shook it and turned away, looking for his family. They were easy to find. They were standing right next to the Kenos, who were still signing autographs. He was hugged by his sisters and mother. His father, Master Apple, Uncle Chaz, and Jake all shook his hand and congratulated him on a game well played. Lena hugged him hard and had all kinds of ugly things to say about the other team's pitcher. Aunt Lisa and Aunt Jody pretty much echoed what Lena said. The Stewart boys were excited and jovial. The oldest, Charlie, would start high school in August. Gabe glanced at the Kenos. Taylor was also signing autographs, but she looked up and smiled at him. He pointed toward the school and motioned for her to follow where he went. She handed a girl her autograph and slipped away. Of course, Ricky noticed and motioned at the Ameritech agent, who followed her at a discreet distance. Gabe was waiting just inside the door of the school. He took her hand, ushered her quickly down the hall, his cleats clicking loudly on the floor. He took a left at the locked breezeway door and found a corner, leaned her against the wall, smiled at her, leaned forward and kissed her. Taylor wrapped her arms around his neck. I have missed you so much. Me too. I've missed you. It's been a crazy week, but having you right here, right now, it makes it all better. He kissed her again. She sighed. I don't understand how all this happened, how I came to feel so attached to you so fast, but being with you just seems right. I don't know either, Taylor. Before last week, you were just a beautiful girl that I've known all my life, who was off limits and way above my pay grade. She ran her hands over his shirt front, covered with Georgia red clay. You are a mess. Oh, yeah, sorry. He went to brush some dirt off her shirt, but thought better of it. We need to get back before your dad comes hunting for you. She giggled, pulled his head down for another kiss. He lifted her again, like he did in California, and again she wrapped her legs around his waist, and they kissed for a long time. "Excuse me, Miss Taylor, but your father says it's time to go," and he stopped and shrugged as he listened to his earpiece. "And if he doesn't see your face come out that door in about 30 seconds, he's going to beat you within an inch of your life." Ricky looked over at the man who spoke. He looked to be about 30. He was carrying, though it wasn't where anyone could see. However, Gabe was aware of the bulge. He looked questioningly at Taylor. "My bodyguard," she explained. "Ameritech?" Gabe asked. "Yes," the man answered. "Agent Dalton, I work for your dad. By the way, you rocked it out there today." "Thanks. We'd better go," Agent Dalton said. Sighing, they headed out. "Has your father ever hit you?" Gabe asked. Taylor giggled. "Sure. On the beach, every morning. But I get some contact in, too." He blew out a relieved breath. Sparring. He was glad he didn't have to lose respect for Ricky Kino. "Beat you within an inch of your life?" Gabe questioned. Taylor laughed. "It's a joke. When I was a little girl, I asked him what that meant. I'd heard it in a movie. I thought it was a dumb expression. Every once in a while, he uses it to make me laugh." They emerged from the school, and the look on her father's face didn't look at all like he was joking. Neither did the look on his own father's face. Gabe turned to Agent Dalton. "Do you think they would allow Taylor to ride back to the inn with me?" He pointed south. "My pickup is down there in the student parking lot." Agent Dalton spoke for a moment and nodded. "Yes, as long as I ride along." Gabe frowned and nodded. "Okay, we'll take it. But you have to ride in the back," Gabe said. The agent smiled. "Oh, who am I to get in the way of young love?" Taylor smiled. She liked the sound of that. They headed to student parking in one of the last vehicles still in the lot, Gabe's old 2015 black F-150. They climbed in. He started the truck and had to quickly turn down the stereo. He smiled. Sorry." Taylor giggled. Gabe smiled. "So, how you doing, Taylor?" She smiled. "I'm starving." "Well, Grams and her kitchen staff have been cooking up a storm, so whatever it is, it's going to be good." And crowded, he thought. Gabe glanced in the rearview mirror at Agent Dalton. "Do you think we could take an extra 15 minutes to walk down by the lake, just so Taylor and I can have a little alone time before the crowd at the inn?" "And where am I supposed to be?" "You could stay in the truck." Dalton shook his head. "That's a negative. No one would even notice if we're a few minutes late." "Listen, kid, whatever you can get done in 15 minutes will not be worth the trouble you'll be in. You'll both be in. Heck, we'll all be in. So it's ill-advised." Gabe got a text, picked up his phone and glanced at it. He used his thumb to quickly type in the words "yes, sir," and tossed his phone back onto the console. Taylor picked the phone up and giggled as she read the text that had come from Gabe's dad. "Agent Dalton is correct. You had better be pulling up here in 2 minutes." She turned to the agent. "Open mic?" "Yes, indeed," he said with a smile. New scene. It's still April 12th. It's Friday evening. Pine Forest Country Inn, Pine Forest, Georgia. As soon as they arrived, Gabe ran up to Jake's room and quickly changed his clothes. He had no time to shower. He washed his hands and face, ran a hand through his thick hair, and headed back downstairs. The Pine Forest Country Inn was delighted that they had 3 vacancies, and even more delighted to offer those 3 rooms to their famous clientele. Currently, the Kenos, including Jeffy, and also the Stewarts and the Tanners, were about to enjoy a gourmet dinner compliments of Miss Mattie Lewis, though she now delegates most of the actual kitchen work to her staff. There were also 4 other guests staying at the inn who were a little bit starstruck by the people who occupied the table. Grandmaster Eric Kino was given a seat of honor at the head of the giant table at the inn. The table was even larger than the one at the Kino estate back in Cali. It had been hand-built by Mattie's husband, the grandfather of Lisa Lewis. When Lisa had taken over turning the old farmhouse into an inn, the table was refinished and had become a beautiful conversation piece. It currently seated 26 people with ease. Well, 26 and 1 2-year-old in a high chair. Presently, Eric Kino sat at the head, his wife Shelley on his right and Miss Mattie on his left. They'd had to talk her into sitting with them. At 87, she showed no signs of slowing down and was always getting up to wait on someone. The rest of the table was occupied on Shelley's side by little Erilyn, Lisa, Chaz and Lena Stewart, Jeffy Keno Wallace, Bree and Ricky Keno, Daisy and Lily Anderson, and two of the four outsiders. On Maddie's side sat Jody, John, and Jake Apple, Gabe Tanner, Taylor Keno, little Iris Tanner in her high chair, Lizzie and Keegan Tanner, Violet and Rose Anderson, and Matt and Charlie Stewart. The third and fourth guests sat at the end, which made them happy, they said, because they had a great view of the Kenos. Maddie asked Eric Keno if he would bless the food, which he did, eloquently. The menu, as always, was scrumptious. Pear salad with mixed greens, walnuts and blue cheese with walnut vinaigrette, wild mushroom ravioli and butternut and ricotta ravioli, Brussels sprouts with green peppercorn brandy sauce, sage brown butter garlic yeast rolls, and key lime or chocolate banana pies. Miss Maddie, your menu is exquisite, Eric stated. Maddie blushed. Cooking for people was her bliss. Eric's eyes wandered over the large group, and as he laid his eyes on each person, he felt his heart swell. Not just members of his own family, but every single person. There was low chatter as everyone ate, and he watched Jeffy briefly lay her hand on Lena's face. He watched Jake's eyes glow with love aimed at Lena. New love was beautiful. The thought moved his eyes down to Gabe and Taylor. He wasn't sure about the love thing there, but there was definite chemistry, and it was strong, and they are probably struggling with their Christian beliefs and lustful feelings. He smiled at the girls he thought of as his angels, namely the Anderson girls. Only Heather was missing, as she was doing her thing up in Tennessee, working with some horse and cattle ranches. Way down at the end of the table were the Stewart boys, ages 14 and 12, if he remembered correctly. An important age for each boy. He would make it a point to speak privately with each of them while he's here, see if he can be of service in any way. Eric noticed two people looking at him. His son, Ricky, smiled knowingly and nodded at his father. Eric smiled back. Ricky knew that Eric had been assessing the group and seeing if there was anyone God wanted him to help. It was something Eric often did when in a large group. Eric also glanced down at his wife. She had also been watching him. She, too, knew his intentions. He took her hand briefly, squeezed it, and leaned over to kiss her cheek. He looked back up. There were 4 people at the table whom he didn't know, and since there are no coincidences, he spoke to the one sitting just opposite him. When he did, the entire table quieted. That's just the way it seemed to always be whenever Eric spoke. "Mrs. Williams, right?" Eric said. The woman dropped her fork and it clattered to the table. "Oh, yes, that's right," she said, obviously surprised that Eric Keno was speaking to her. "And this is your family?" he asked, motioning to the 3 sitting on his right. "Yes, these are my 2 daughters and my son-in-law, Autumn, Aubrey, and Andrew," she said as she pointed to each one. "All A's," she added with a smile. "It's nice to meet you all," Eric said kindly. "So where are you from?" "We're from Baltimore." "Well, I'm just curious, what brings you out here to Middle Georgia?" "Well, she stopped and glanced at her family. "Probably more like I wanted to come to Georgia to feel closer to my husband. Anthony was from here." She smiled. Another A. "Anyway, he wasn't exactly from Pine Forest, but a small town near here. He recently passed away and—" She stopped and used her napkin to blot at her eyes. "Sorry." Eric nodded kindly but stayed quiet. She went on. "Anthony always talked about getting back home, but we were never able to make it happen. He worked all the time. He was an attorney, a corporate lawyer, and there just was no time, and now he's gone." "Oh, sorry, got off track," she said, waving her hand. "Anyway, I wanted to come here to small town Georgia to see what he was always talking about, to maybe feel closer to him. My sweet daughters didn't want me to come alone, and my son-in-law didn't want us girls to go alone, so here we all are. We saw an advertisement about this inn, and it has more than lived up to its reputation. It has been a blessing to be here, and Miss Maddie and Miss Jody and John, they have been so wonderful. And Chaz and Lisa have let us ride on their ranch, and that was so much fun. And now here we are, rubbing shoulders with real movie stars. And what an experience this has been." Shelley watched as Eric smiled his kind smile at the sweet woman. She knew all too well the effects his smile would have. The woman looked to be in her mid-50s, maybe. Her daughters were young, in their 20s, and they had already lost their father. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Williams. I know it's been difficult for you, and I would love to speak more to you privately, Eric said, and share some insights, if you would like. You would? She blushed. Why? I mean, you don't even know me. I know you, he said softly, and you are important, and so are these beautiful members of your family who have come here to support you. He nodded at them. I commend you. He looked back at the woman. Maybe we could speak more tomorrow. The woman nodded. I will very much look forward to that. The table at large went back to quiet chatter as Eric directed his attention to others. The Anderson twins were seated the closest to Mrs. Williams and her family, and they struck up a conversation with them. Gabe watched everything taking place. He hadn't thought he could have more respect for Grandmaster Keno than he already did, but here it was. Eric didn't have to speak to these people. No one would have thought anything of it if he didn't. Gabe certainly hadn't spoken to them. Now, though, he would make a point to do so before the evening was ended. There was something more to all this. Gabe puzzled over it. He glanced back up at Grandmaster Keno and realized he was looking at him. Gabe smiled at the man, and he smiled back. And there it was again, that warm feeling, the one that made Gabe know there was more to this earthly life. His eyes moistened, and Taylor, next to him, slipped her hand into his. He looked down at her, and she smiled. I know, she whispered. He gazed into her beautiful eyes. What was happening? And that is the end of chapter 11.